1899 Ending Explained. Starting on a steamship called Kerberos in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean in 1899, we went on to finish 8 episodes later, 200 years in the future, in outer space, outside of the original simulation in the year 2099. I went into this show not really knowing what to expect, and that was most certainly the best mindset to have. With multiple characters, including NPCs to delve into, the very idea and fascination around the brain and the limits of what we know about it, and the focus on what the ending meant, I'm going to recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this series. So let's get into it. Here is 1899 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. This show was certainly a mind-bender, and as every episode went on, it had you constantly guessing around what was real, what was reality, and if what we were watching even existed. The trip to New York for a group of people who were escaping a torturous past was the only commonality that each of the passengers had on board Kerberos. However, the similarities between Kerberos and Prometheus, the ship that we were first introduced to which had gone missing 4 months ago, were uncanny. And you could see the same fate being met, which we did eventually see. Maura was the main person that we were following all throughout the show, and her connection to the young boy who didn't speak and the mystery passenger who boarded the ship called Daniel. This young boy Elliot turned out to be her son, and Daniel turned out to be her husband. As the episodes went on, we saw the focus shift on making us question what reality was, and if we can actually believe that things are how they appear in front of us. If the life that we're living is the true one and only reality. This was something that was at the core of the show and tied directly into the ending that was left open with a question. The Kerberos ship, the Prometheus ship, and many others were all part of a simulation, and what we were watching unfold was not the real world. We were led to believe that Henry, Maura's father, had created this simulation and trapped her in there, when in reality, Maura and Elliot created the simulation so that they'd be able to be with their child Elliot, who had died. This simulation was the only way that they were able to see him, hence why we saw him always in the grave. However, whilst Maura had been in there, her brother Kieran, a character who we heard of all throughout the season, was actually the main villain behind the reason as to why she was stuck in there. He'd taken over the whole code of the simulation and kept her trapped there, leading her to forget all of her memories. The journey to New York was something that was never going to arrive, as it didn't go that far. It was just an endless loop. Elliot had been trying his best to wake her up inside of the simulation, which he did manage to do. Elliot sent a virus to the main program, which is what we saw unfold in the climax of the finale, and he changed the wake-up trigger. Instead of it being the key in the Black Pyramid, Elliot changed it to his wedding ring and the design of a pyramid like one of Elliot's toys. We saw Maura use it and wake up, but she woke up in the year 2099, in space, alongside all of the other characters that we saw in the show, plugged into the simulation. We saw a piece of paper that read, "May your coffee kick in before reality does," which was a line that we saw written on all of the books on board Kerberos. The final thing that we saw was a display screen where it stated Project Prometheus, with the coordinates of the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean and all of the relevant numbers of the passengers and crew, meaning that the ship was always destined to sink. It was an endless loop of sinking and forgetting memories until Maura figured how to wake up. Alongside this was a message saying, "Hello sister, welcome to reality," meaning that she was now stuck in a reality of floating around in the middle of space on her own, inside of a ship called Project Prometheus, as another simulation of the project was about to begin for those that were plugged in and hooked up. Unless this is also just another simulation that she's in. Who can question if she's now in reality, as she didn't question that she was in a simulation back in 1899. That's what I feel the ending wanted us to think anyway. Especially the fact that it finished zooming into her eye and her pupil was in the shape of a pyramid, something that we saw all throughout the show when they woke up inside of the simulation. Kieran could be playing God, like we heard Henry mention when speaking with Elliot. We know no bounds to what is real and what is not, and if the mind has a limitless amount of knowledge to obtain. One of the first lines in the show was, "Our brain is wider than the sky and deeper than the ocean." So it's rather fitting that the final shot was of Maura in space, where it's forever expanding, just like what we like to think how knowledge is. There was an empty pod next to Jerome in the final scene when Maura was looking around, so it does make me wonder who that belonged to, and if it was originally Kieran's, as Maura wasn't originally in that pod. Escaping a traumatic past was something that was also at the core of this series. but I feel it really leaned in on the fact that there's no escaping something that you're trying to forget. Even when plugged into a simulation where the characters were programmed to not remember anything, their traumatic past was still coming back and it was haunting them like a ghost. And in some instances it was. The guilt that one can hold, the betrayal, and also the grief stays with you for a long time. And even in Maura's case, when you try to undo the past, it can often cause more trouble than letting go. I really enjoyed this show. It was a dark, mysterious sci-fi thriller, and we've not had something like this in a long while. The subtlety of the details in the show, such as the pyramids and triangles being everywhere, such as on earrings, clothing, and decorations. The show was plastered with them, and it was very clever. The connection between tapping into the people's core memories despite the fact that they couldn't remember anything, by being able to access them by going underneath their bed, was really well thought out and showed the different parts of the brain but also the different memories that individuals stored, again tying into the idea that they can't just be forgotten. The twist at the end, with Henry being written into the narrative like many of the other characters, was something that I thought was clever. I genuinely believed that he was the bad guy in all of this, but all he wanted was to just escape. He was just as stuck as what everybody else on board Kerberos was. All of the characters' arcs brought something unique to the show and showed that despite the different classes, types of people, and geographical locations from where they came from, it painted them all in a similar light and showed just how connected everybody was. I would say my favourite episodes were the first few and the final two. The first 3 episodes were just perfect at really setting up the world and showing us that quite literally anything was possible within it, alongside getting to know these characters and all that they'd been through, plus the mystery around Elliot, the fog, and the supernatural element to it. And in the final couple of episodes, it felt like we quite literally went on a roller coaster of a ride where, even though characters were dying, it didn't feel like there was really any consequences, so the emotional attachment to losing so many didn't weigh on you as a viewer. Plus, all of the revelations were satisfying to see. The ending did feel like something you could have certainly seen from the Twilight Zone, and I think that's something that felt quite fresh about it, because there was twist after twist, but it managed to top it every time with a rewarding payoff at the end. This show most certainly feels like one of a kind on the platform. With it being set in 1899, you feel like you were immersed within that time period, and the contrast of tech that we see being used, along with the destination of the final scene, does make it feel like you've gone on a real journey as a viewer, so I commend it for that. I'd recommend giving this show a watch because I don't think you'll be disappointed. So, there you have it, 1899 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the A button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this show? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.